Hello, today is Friday, July 24th, 2015, and I am your host, Sue Brown, and welcome to info2rail, your freight train to modern media. How y'all doing today? Well, it's a beautiful day in downtown New York, Canandaigua, New York, and it's a beautiful sunny day. I want to welcome you all to the show, and we have a great show in store for you today. We are very fortunate to have psychic Jeanne Mayell with us today. First, we're going to take a little glimpse into the missing persons. Today, I'm going to do a special thing on a little girl who's been missing for a while now, and her name is Lindsay Baum. If you go on my info2rail Google Sites page, there's a picture of her on there and all the information about her. Lindsay was last seen at 9:15 p.m. on June 26, 2009, when she left her friend's home on Maple Street, where she had been visiting, officials said. Lindsay was going to walk the 4 blocks to her home on Mamison Road, which is roughly a 10-minute walk, but something happened in the short-term distance, and Lindsay's never arrived home. Numerous searches took place in the hours and days after she vanished, and bloodhounds were brought in, but no sign of the missing girl has ever been found. Her case gained national attention as time went on and was featured on the cover of People magazine. About 2.5 years ago, investigators identified a local jewelry store owner as a person of interest in Lindsay's disappearance. Police searched Tim Hartman's home and business in October. Hartman told police he wasn't in town during the hours that Baum disappeared, but convenience store surveillance cameras footage showed him in McCleary at exactly the time of the disappearance. But Hartman denied having anything to do with the disappearance, and he says he honestly doesn't remember being in McCleary at the time when the girl vanished. Meanwhile, her family has continued to push to keep attention focused on the case. A $35,000 reward is available for any information in this case. As I tell you guys every week, it's a passion of mine, and it's very important to me that we are looking for these people. The fact that a body hasn't been found is, that still gives us hope that Lindsay Baum is still alive. So let's look around and stuff. She is missing from McCleary, Washington, but she could be anywhere, you guys. So let's look around, and like I said, you can go on my info2rail page for Google Sites, and her picture's on there and all the information I just read you. To me, this is very important, guys. We got to get this information out there, and I'm gonna bring you guys missing person cases every week. So, well, we're gonna go to a short break right now, and when we return, we will have Jeanne Mayell with us. Stay tuned. Don't go away. We'll be right back. Okay, we are back with Jeanne Mayell. Jeanne is a psychic, one of America's most talented tarot readers, and a psychotherapist who's been giving readings from the Boston area for 25 years. Holding master degree in public health, education, and counseling psychology from Harvard University and Framingham State University, Mayell brings intelligence and professionalism to her craft, but most of all, she is gifted with extraordinary intuition. Mayell says that psychic ability is part of everyone's natural guidance system, a power you can develop and hone. She regularly trains lay people to read each other and predict the future with remarkable results, and receives international attention for their accurate predictions. Hello, Jeanne, and welcome to info2rail, and thank you so much for being on our show.
You're welcome, Sue. Glad to be here.
Can you start out telling us a little bit about you and how you got started being a psychic?
Oh, wow, that goes way back. About 30 years ago, I had a whole other career, more mainstream career in politics and government, and it was just not working for me. I just felt like it wasn't relevant to what was important to me, and I was growing more spiritual, and I had started out very spiritual, and then I let it go in exchange for getting ahead, and I kind of reached a dead end. I was right at the height of my career, actually. I lived in New York and was working for the mayor of New York, who was Mayor Koch at the time, and it was very upwardly mobile. I was doing really well, and I just felt uninspired. And I ended out moving back to Boston, which was my home, and connecting in a more holistic world, and feeling like there was something about ancient people and indigenous people that was calling to me, and it was just coming really out of my own inner guide. It wasn't anything I read or anybody I talked to. And then made some friends, and somebody took me to see a psychic, and I went to see this man who later became a mentor for me, named David Hall, who's dead now, but David was a real legend in his own time in the Boston area. And he started reading me, and it was as if he could see inside my soul. And I felt, oh my God, this changes everything. And at the time I thought, this was so important. Why weren't people studying this? Why weren't people shouting this to the rooftops? Why was this some sort of fringe thing that people were into? It should be mainstream. It was a phenomenal tool. And why wasn't psychology involved in it? The whole field of psychology. Anyway, I eventually ended up getting a deck of cards and playing around with it while I was working as a writer and studying. I was at Harvard School of Public Health getting my second master's degree at the time, and I had roommates, and I would pull cards and ask them to ask questions, and it seemed like everything that I came up with was just not only relevant to the people who were asking questions, but deeply insightful, really extraordinary. And I noticed that people felt healed, and I felt it too. And so I kept doing this while I was a student. When I graduated from Harvard, I had a lot of opportunity opening up in healthcare, hospitals, administration. I was offered a teaching job at a small college, and all I could really think at the time was that I just needed to meditate. I needed to get more connected to myself and to the universe, and so I did something that was unbelievable to me, really. I just turned down everything, and I went to a spiritual center called Kripalu out in Lenox, Massachusetts, and which is a world-famous center now. At the time, it was doing pretty well, but it wasn't quite as renowned as it is now. And I went there and meditated and learned yoga and just started opening more and more. And one thing led to another, and I noticed that when I would give readings to people just for fun, mostly because it helped me to connect to them more, and I felt deeply like my heart opening when I read somebody. And then people started lining up and wanting readings, and strangers would call me and say, somebody had gotten a reading from me. And at the time, I wasn't doing it as a profession, but eventually I did. Eventually, what actually happened was I was working as a writer, and I was writing an article for The Atlantic, which it was called The Atlantic Monthly at the time. It was a health-related article, a kind of investigative story. And while I was doing that, I had children. I was married with small children, and I discovered that I really could do much better giving readings to people as a profession than writing articles, even though I liked that as well. So it really took off at that point, and I just started giving readings full-time, and I've never stopped since. That was the early 80s, mid-80s, and it's a full-time job, and I teach, too. And since my kids grew up, they left home about almost 10 years ago, I started teaching because I wanted people to understand how to be intuitive and what this incredible gift that we all have was. And I've really enjoyed turning people on to this gift. And not just me reading them, but watching people read each other and seeing people discover that intuition is something we all have. So there's my bringing you up to date.
So you believe that everybody has the psychic ability? Oh,
I absolutely. At one point I started doing research. I have a real research background, and I started doing research and, well, more like literature search, reading what other researchers have been doing. And I discovered, I teach this class that I put together called ESP for Skeptics, and I teach it all around the Boston area. And what it is it's a review of the research that's been done on psychic ability going back hundreds of years. And there's a lot of research, and especially in the last 30 years. And the research is robust. It is strong. It is actually, there's much more evidence of that we are all intuitive and that we are all telepathic, that we can read each other's minds, that we are precognitive, that we can see the future. There's much more stronger evidence of that than there is much of the pharmaceutical evidence that is used, like aspirin, for example. Does aspirin protect against heart disease? Well, the evidence for precognition and telepathy is about 6 times stronger than the evidence for aspirin protecting against heart disease. And you know, everybody buys into that one. My father used to take an aspirin every day of his life when he was elderly to protect his heart. So, absolutely. I mean, and there are very renowned, accomplished scientists who aren't afraid to do research. This is an area that is very taboo in the science world, and so scientists are actually afraid to engage in research on psychic phenomenon because they worry about their careers. But there are some highly renowned scientists out there. Daryl Bem from Cornell University is one of the, according to the New York Times, is one of the foremost social scientists of his generation. And he has been, for the last 20 years, doing research into psychic phenomenon, and it's been published in mainstream journals. And there's a meta-analysis, which is where you do research where you look at hundreds of studies, and it's really it's pretty much, it's so solid and robust. It really is not disputable, but people dispute anyway, and that's always been the case with science, that there are some things people just can't accept or believe. But everyone has this ability. Average people have this ability.
So
we wouldn't have survived as a species without it.
How do we go about tapping into that ability?
Well, first of all, people are tapping into it all the time without realizing it. Even people who don't believe they have it are using it. So, but I can give you some ideas on how to become more aware of inner guidance. We have a compass, an inner compass, and it's really in our senses. Like people talk about the sixth sense, but it's really not a sixth sense. It's our 5 senses. Just use your senses. So here's an example. A good one, a couple of good ones are, you're trying to decide whether to, do one thing or another, and notice what makes you smile. What makes you smile is going to be, even if you rationally haven't figured out what the right direction to go. Should I go back to school, or should I stay at this job I have? Well, which makes me smile? That's intuition. Another guide would be enthusiasm. The word enthusiasm means, it's from the Greek, and it means going with God or having the divine flow through you. If there are any Greek people out there in the audience, they know what enthusiasm means in Greek. And it's a signal when you feel incredibly enthusiastic that your intuition, your whole body is telling you that this is a positive direction to go. So, I mean, that's what happened to me. When I graduated from Harvard, my enthusiasm to go to Kripalu and meditate and tune in, turn inward, was so strong that I knew that's what I had to do. And it turned out to be intuitively the best decision I ever made. Another example is there's a Japanese businessman who is quoted a lot in the intuition networks, very successful multimillionaire who doesn't make a big business decision without first, he'll have a big meal, and if he gets indigestion, he won't sign the contract. So that's your gut. Your gut is like the second brain. It has 100 million nerve endings in it, and you pay attention. If you listen to your gut, it'll tell you whether something is not a good direction to go, because it'll start to get tight. it relaxes when everything's okay. So that's just like, that doesn't help you necessarily give someone a reading, those tips that I'm giving you, but they will help you through, guide your own life. And there are many other tips I could give you, but that just gives you a start.
For meditation, I've talked to several people who have the issue with meditation, and I do as well. I try to meditate, and I've read so much about meditation and tried to do it, and my problem is when I think I'm getting into meditation, I fall asleep.
That is common, actually. Meditation really is about paying attention to what your senses are feeling. And when, we have this antennae in our system. Actually, when I was on the Coast to Coast show, George Norrie called it antenna, and it's really a beautiful way to put it. We have a natural antenna, and it is our senses. So what you're hearing, what you're smelling, what you're seeing, what you're feeling emotionally, what your sense of touch, and these are your antennae to the energy around you, which is in the present moment. If you're thinking about the future, well, then you're not in the present moment, and there's nothing intuitive there happening. If you're thinking about the past, you're definitely not in the present moment, and again, nothing intuitive is happening. But if you can be in the present moment, even for a minute, and it's very difficult because we're all trained to think ahead and worry about the past, but if you can take a deep breath, and breathing is a great way to do it, because when you take a breath, your autonomic nervous system automatically relaxes you. And if you take a breath and you pay attention to what that feels like, attend to the breath, feel the breath, then you're in the present moment, even if just for a second. If you add to that when you meditate, when I teach meditation, I guide people, I don't let them drift off. Because if we drift off, we're going to get into our heads, or we're going to fall asleep. Which falling asleep is, sometimes we just need sleep, and so meditation causes us to sleep. But a lot of it is also we just don't want to think. We don't like what we're thinking, and so we kind of shut down. So when you're meditating, if you pay attention to your senses, like one thing I do a lot is I'll tell people to listen to the sounds around them. Like I have this singing bowl, like this. And I'll say, listen to that sound until you can't hear it anymore. And now listen to all the sounds in the room. See how many sounds you can hear. And when you're trying to hear as many sounds as possible, you're in your senses. You're in your audio sense. And that's meditation.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry. Well, what it is doing is you can't shut off your mind from thinking, about what you're going to do tomorrow or what you're worried about. But what you can do is put your attention to something else. And that little ticker tape of basically noise, thinking, will keep going. But if you're paying attention, like if you're saying, oh, I'm going to listen to every sound that I can hear, or I'm going to see if I can smell an aroma, like, bread baking, or I'm going to feel how my body feels right now, like my feet touching the floor, my hands, what are they touching? How does it feel? Then you are directing your attention to your senses, and that is the present moment. And that's your antennae working, and that is meditation.
I think I blamed the meditation problem on ADD. For a long time I said, boy, I cannot even stay awake and do this meditation thing. What is the matter with me? I get like deep into relaxation and all of a sudden I'm waking up saying, that is not what I was trying to do.
It's funny about ADD. People who meditate, they've done a lot of studies on mindful meditation, the kind of meditation I was describing to you, where you pay attention to your senses. And over time, ADD is reduced. It goes away.
Wow.
So it's very powerful as a healer or a healant for your system.
I've read cards for a long time. For me, it was a very young age when I realized that I had, the gift of being able to see people. And that's been me since I was a kid. It was, you know, I could walk into a room and sit down and chat with somebody for 5 minutes, and I knew what kind of personality they were and who they were and what they were. And if I always got that overwhelming feeling that I had to get away from somebody if they weren't good for me. My problem is I'm too nice, and I'm not one of those people that just says, you're not good for me, get away from me. And a lot of times I probably should be. But I've done it for so many years, and for me it got real strong when I lost my grandfather in 1990, and I actually I left my body. I was sleeping on the couch.
Sorry.
Thank you. I left my body. I was sleeping on the couch here at my mom's, and 3 doors up, all of a sudden my body wasn't standing in the living room with my grandfather watching what was going on, but I was. And I watched him come in the door from putting my cousin on the bus, and I watched him drop dead in the chair. And it was, but back then, I'd never lost family, and my family had always been so close. So back then, I didn't realize that your grandparents died. And I was 18. I mean, I was just a pretty sheltered person, but for that, I woke up a couple minutes later to my father standing above me saying, your grandfather just had a heart attack and they don't think he's going to make it. And I said, no, he died when he hit the chair. So that's when,
your intuition was really working.
Oh, but I didn't want to see that. But that's something that happens. For me, I have a deja vu moment. And in my deja vu, it's not a normal one like everyone else has or how they describe they have it. Theirs is that they just have been at this point in time before and they know what's gonna happen, or, I've been here before and I've already done this. For me, my mind races to the end of the deja vu, and it's always a bad outcome. So for me, that deja vu moment is a message in time that I have to change what's coming up in the very near future, at the end of that event, or it's going to be really bad. And that's helped me throughout my whole life.
It's like a warning system, you mean?
Yeah, it takes me right to the end of what's going on at that moment, what bad thing is coming out of it, so I can change it at that moment. And I do.
Well, intuition is a very good warning system, and it has kept our species alive. It's not only helped us to find food and find opportunities, for mating and in terms of like creating families, but it's also helped us to avoid danger. And women, the research shows that women are particularly sensitive to danger intuitively, precognitively, that we can anticipate it before it happens. All women, I mean, not just particularly gifted people, and that makes sense because we have to guard our babies and keep our species alive. So it makes sense that we would have that advantage, that evolutionary advantage.
I read tarots for a while. That's what I started out in when I was younger because it was such an interest to me. And after a while, people would come to me and ask me questions, and I wouldn't even have to get out my tarots anymore. It was like the answer was just there.
Exactly. Yeah, well, that does happen. That when you learn to read the cards, like I first started with the cards, I was very intuitive, but I didn't realize it. The cards make it easy because you're using your eyes, that sense, the sense of vision. And as a species, we rely about 80% on our eyes. So people find that they can get into their visual sense more easily than any other of their senses. And so that's why tarot is popular, as well as crystal balls and tea leaves and that sort of thing. But once you've gotten in the practice of reading somebody, it starts to, you start to open up the rest of you. And I notice in my students, it's definitely true of me, and I've noticed it in my students, that they become more and more intuitive without the cards after they've been reading for a long time, or for a while. Some really take off, and others take longer. But yeah, it's a really great way to start is with cards to open your intuition. Some people do better with palm reading, and that I notice they like to read palms. I don't read palms, but that's another great way to get going.
How do you think a clairvoyant does theirs? Does their tarot, or does their psychic readings?
Well, When you by clairvoyant, you mean like a psychic or somebody who's just seeing inwardly?
Yeah. Yes.
Is that what you mean?
Yes.
So basically, you mean someone who doesn't use cards. How are they doing it?
Yeah, how they can just seem to just see things. I mean, just all the time.
Well, there are different ways, and it all depends on what the person is more oriented towards. So I'm very visual and I'm imaginative. So the way it works for me and for a lot of people, and this is how I teach people to be just pure clairvoyant, is you close your eyes and take a deep breath and you look inwardly, like you have a screen inside when your eyes are closed, and you focus on a person who you're going to read, and oftentimes pictures will pop up. You might see the person, you might see a color, you might see something symbolic, you might even see something that is just about, doesn't seem to be about that person, like you might see a train going down the track or an animal galloping through the woods, but what you see is about that person. And the more you practice doing this, inner visioning, the easier it gets. It's like flexing a muscle or training a muscle. In fact, there's a meditation, which I have on my website, colors. I call it a colors meditation, which I learned many years ago from someone. And the meditation, and I teach this to my students, is that you close your eyes and you envision colors of the rainbow or the light spectrum, and you count backwards in time. And so you see the color red, and then see the color orange, and you go through the light spectrum. And it's a practice. It helps to hone the skill of inner visioning, because you're practicing seeing inwardly with your eyes closed. And so many clairvoyants just close their eyes and see pictures, and they share what they see. Some clairvoyants, it's like a movie going on. I actually heard one woman just say, I feel like I'm watching a movie, and she just shares the movie. The movie is about you. Other people see, as I said, symbols. Some of the symbols are ancient symbols. I see astrological symbols. I'll see ancient symbols that I don't even know what they are, and I go and look them up, and then I can tell the person what it is I'm seeing. And then we also have our own symbols, like Carl Jung talked about. He had an essay called Man and His Symbols, and what he said was that some symbols are universal, like the symbol of the moon. Everybody gets that symbol. And some symbols can be particular to your own kind of subgroup, like an American flag would be a symbol that would mean something to someone who lives in this country during the last 200 years. And then there are symbols that are just yours, your own life. And like I get a coat hanger that will show up, an empty coat hanger in my mind, and that will represent that the person I'm reading is concerned that someone in their family is going to move out or leave or has already left. So you can rely on symbols. And then finally, clairvoyance, some people don't see symbols. They simply start getting thoughts or ideas, and they just follow them. They talk about them. They can just stare right at you and they start. What they're doing is they're paying attention to the thoughts that are popping up in their head, and they're trusting in that moment that every thought that's coming to them is about the person they're reading. And when you have that kind of trust, like you really relax and trust and you believe in yourself, there's no limit to how clairvoyant you can be.
Huh. That is very interesting.
It is. It's fascinating, isn't it?
It is. I've done tests before when you get these people online and you call them and they give you one free question. And I called it just to see, if these people are authentic. Well, the problem that I'm running into with all these people that give you between 1 and 3 free questions is they don't answer your question. They'll tell you that there's an evil presence around you or some girl that's there. It's usually
the whole curse thing.
Yes.
It's a curse scam.
Or a woman that's trying to come between you and your man, and if you pay me $200, I can remove that. And that frustrates me. And I have to explain to a lot of people that, I do readings for, that I talk with, that you can't trust that. You can't send them that money. They're not going to do anything.
Well, I mean, I myself have never encountered someone like that, but directly. But my clients, over the years, I've been reading now 30 years, I've had people tell me I gave, and it depends on how much people give to these people, these quote-unquote psychics, depends on their income. But I've had people who told me they gave $20,000 to somebody, or $10,000 or $500, depending on what their ability to pay is. And some of these folks these quote-unquote psychics, I have to say, it's disreputable. It's as close to evil as it gets. It gives this whole profession a really dark reputation, and it's basically preying on people. And anyone can be psychic. I mean, I could give you or anyone, well, you're already pretty psychic, but I could give somebody a lesson in one evening and send them off, and they could go and give a reading to people. And what this group of curse-type psychics do is when you are psychic with somebody, you say a few things that are true, and then they believe in you, and it gives you a lot of power. And a lot of these folks, from what I can tell, they prey on vulnerability, because a lot of people go to psychics when they feel very vulnerable. I'm alone, I don't have anyone, or I'm worried about money, or I have a child who's sick, or I'm sick. And so these people are very vulnerable. They're like patients. They're like it's like a healthcare situation, and they're the patient. And this is the doctor, and the doctor is preying on them. And it's a terrible thing to do, but it's part of human nature. I mean, it's going to happen. And people should be aware that whenever anyone says to you, oh, I see a curse, or I see people who don't like you, or I see bad, and then they say, if you give me money, I can, make a donation, and I'll buy candles and pray for you. It's just a big tip-off, and it's going on probably as we speak. There's probably somebody out there doing that, and it's sad. But
I've experienced it a lot.
It's unfortunate.
Sorry? I've experienced it a lot because just trying it out. I mean, I would just call to see if they were actually authentic. And never did I hear the answer to my question. It was always, oh, you got a curse in your family. It's like, you know how much I believe in God, and you're going to tell me I'm cursed? No. It's a problem I'm having at this moment. Yeah. It doesn't have anything to do with a curse. For me...
Well, are you saying that this happens when you call people who say one free question?
Yes. There's just certain ones of them out there.
Yeah. Well, that's a real lure. One free question. It's like a lure.
Well,
and now I'll hook you, and then you'll pay me tons of money.
Well, for me, my passion, the thing that I would like to use my gift for the most is I have a passion for trying to help find missing persons, or help solve cold cases, and that's something I'm very passionate about. I have 4 girls, and I couldn't imagine one of them missing. And for me, it's those parents who are suffering every moment that their child is gone, and what is that child going through? For me, I would love to be able to figure out how to use my ability to be able to help these missing person cases or these cold case files to at least bring justice. And that's where I struggle, because I just can't seem to figure out how to hook myself in that way so that I could at least try to help.
Yeah, I've gotten worked up about that too, and I've worked on a couple of cases and really forced myself, just pushed my mind and just said, see what happened. A boy was went missing. A 19-year-old, beautiful 19-year-old boy went missing from my son's college, and I tried so hard, and I saw a lot, and I shared it actually with the police, and it did not help find him. I did see, pretty much got what happened, but and for that, and I also worked on the Natalie Holloway case, which had many years ago in Aruba, a young 17-year-old blonde, beautiful
girl.
She
was from Rochester. Yeah. Or no, that wasn't that one.
No, she was from Alabama.
Okay, that was a different one. Yeah.
Yeah, but it was a big kind of national case.
Yep, I remember
missing child, and it turns. I mean, they think now that she was murdered by this local boy who later actually killed somebody else in another country. But the thing was, I saw a lot about the Holloway thing, but I was the hardest thing is to find a local police person who's working on the case, who can work with you, and who knows how to translate what you're seeing into the reality on the ground. And so what happened with the case of this boy was that I could see that he had not gone back to his dorm, which everyone thought he was going back to his dorm, and I could see no, he turned around and went the other way. And I also saw that I thought that he might have tried to cross over this river, and maybe he fell in. Well, it turned out in the end that he had gone the other way, just as I thought, and he had tried to cross over the river, and he had fallen in. But I didn't know exactly. I had a sense. I drew a map and all. But when I communicated that to the police, at the time they said, well, we can't go near the river because it's too dangerous. It was the middle of winter, and it was too dangerous for anybody to get close to the river. But it was also a problem with communicating with people, the police, who are not themselves intuitive. They have, really they need to be trained as well in the business of intuition so that they can feel as well what you're feeling. And my most successful attempts to help people find things have been people who themselves are very intuitive, but they just can't see what they're missing, what they've lost, and together we get it. Together, I get them, I see something, they go, oh, I get it, I see what you're saying, and then they're on the ground where the thing is missing, and they can go get it. So I think we have a ways to go in with missing persons, and I also felt very passionate about it, and yet it's quite frustrating. It's not easy.
Well, the Brittany...
yeah.
The Brittany Drexel case, the one from Rochester here where she went on vacation, that's the one I was referring to in Rochester. And I have an overwhelming feeling, and when I get feelings like that, they're not wrong. And I know that she's not on this earth anymore. I know that she's crossed over, and I don't have any doubt about that. But how do you there's not even a trace of her. That's what I just can't figure that out. I mean, no body.
I'm not familiar with that case. I can tell you that I just drew a card and I see a man, but I see a tough man, but I'm not familiar with that case. I'd want to read a little bit and then go from there. But I don't know what to tell you at the moment. I mean, there was a woman, a school teacher in Colorado, who disappeared, and that became actually a high-profile case. But when it was first happened, her uncle had called me, and he'd gotten my name from somebody, and he asked me what did I think. She'd been missing about 12 hours at the time, and I saw her standing on the ground with angel wings, and I said, I think she's been killed, and if that had been her mother who had called me, or her, I don't know what I would have done, because I wouldn't want to say that to somebody, a loved one. But he was a little bit slightly removed from it, and he was willing to hear whatever I got. And he said, well, that's what he thought too. And then it took weeks and weeks before I think it was over a month or more before they discovered what happened to her. And she had been killed instantly. She had been abducted and killed instantly. And so that was a clear cut. You see somebody and in your mind's eye, and you see angel wings, and you think, well, she's now an angel. Yeah. And she's just standing there on the earth, in a sense, or floating. And so that's what you see. But the Brittany case would be something I wouldn't want to talk on the air like that about her. I'd want to take some time by myself and meditate on it. before I would say anything. And, I have to say, one of the things that I think would be useful is if a bunch of really good psychics got together as a search and rescue team and called each other when these things happen and all meditate together. I mean, I have a lot of success bringing together students who have become very psychic and having us meditate on the future of our world. And I posted on my website with everybody can see what comes true and what doesn't. And the group energy of people meditating together on the future, or in this case, it would be what happened to this girl, is very powerful. You actually get, it's like amplifies your own ability. And I would love to start something like that.
That would be great.
A group of committed psychics. When this boy from my son's college disappeared, I read what I could read on it, and then I called a few psychics that I found on the internet. At the time, I wasn't teaching classes, and I didn't have a group. And only one woman returned my call, and she said, "I see water." She left that message. She wouldn't stay on the phone with me or talk. And I understand that. These women, these psychics are busy, and they have lots of clients, and they can't just be responding to some stranger who calls them. And, that helps me to believe that what I was seeing about the water was true, that he'd fallen in the water. And so yeah, I think you really can gain a lot by getting your heads together, your abilities together.
There was one case, and I had talked to, I had met her online, and her sister's name is Sharon Pryor, and it was a big case in the 70s. She was walking to the pizza parlor to meet her friends, as she always did, and she never made it there. Well, as I read through things, through the articles and such about this, there was another case where another girl, Cheryl Roy, was attacked by a man in the same vicinity. And as soon as I read that, it was like they did find her body, Sharon Pryor's body, and they know that they know what happened to her. But for me, as soon as I read this other case with this girl, it was an instant, I know that he's the one that did this to her. And it was, I don't know how I knew, but there's no doubt in my mind that this man that attacked this woman that got away is the same one that murdered the 16-year-old girl.
Well, if it helps to solve a crime, that's a good thing. Although we have to be very careful about justice and due process.
Right.
Sometimes we think we know things, and it's really just an emotional feeling. But if it can actually find the body, or find a person, then the proof is in the pudding, as it were. You found someone.
Well, absolutely. They didn't have DNA back then, so just to be able to, for this girl to actually be able to positively identify this man and at least check it out. But that's what I mean about some of these missing cases. I get such strong feelings about it, but I want to be able to kind of tap into my psychic energy enough to be able to help bring justice, or at least find these people's bodies, or even if they're alive, a lot of them I think are still alive.
Yeah, I know. I feel the same way you do. I just think it needs to. Psychics have found missing animals and missing people and missing objects, but it's got a long ways to go as a science, or as a skill. It has a ways to go, and I don't know why, but it does. And I know when Natalie Holloway disappeared, I ended up speaking to this organization that uses horses to find people. They track into areas with horses, and I talked to that woman, and I said, "Do you ever use psychics?" And she said, "No, never. We haven't had any luck with psychics." And my thought when she said that was that she was closed-minded, and it's not easy for it to work when a psychic, hears about a high-profile case, calls the police or calls the FBI or calls this woman who's, I think the name of that group was Equus or something like that. They have found bodies before, but they've also tried and not found. And I think that people can be closed-minded, and if they're closed-minded, then all the psychics in the world aren't going to be able to lead anyone to the body, because unless you're on the ground there and involved in the case, I think you really need help. I think you need to connect with other people, and particularly with the criminal justice people, and so they need to be open. It's really not just a simple matter of I'm a psychic, I see what happened to this person, and I make a phone call, and bang, they find the person. It just doesn't usually work that way. It involves imagination, and it involves kind of the group imagination. I'm not sure I'm expressing it well. I haven't really figured out how to solve it. I can also tell you that when you work on these kind of cases, at least when I worked on it, it's very painful.
It is.
Emotionally.
Yes, it is.
Because you in order to find the person, you delve into their own psyche, and you fall in love with them. I mean, this is what happens. This is why I love giving readings to people, is my heart opens to them, and my whole being opens, and it's a wonderful feeling. But what if what you're doing is you're tuning into someone's child who's missing? So your heart opens to them as if you're their mother. And I have to tell you, when they found this boy who was missing, I was devastated. I mean, really devastated. And it was, if I could have helped really find him, it would have been worth it. It was definitely worth it for me to feel bad if I could have helped, relieve his mother's pain, so she didn't have to wait as long. But it's not something for the faint of heart.
It's true. I'm very sensitive, and when Kaylee Ann Polton went missing, she was 4 years old, and she went missing in Rochester, and her neighbor actually killed her in his apartment, and ended up putting her in a vat of some kind of coolant at his work, and he ended up coming forward and saying that he did it because he couldn't live with himself. But I was out looking for her big wheel, on every train track and everything I could do. And, when they finally found her and she had actually been killed, it was devastating.
Yeah.
It just destroys you.
Yeah. I think it helps to band together with other people to help to do this. So
I think
it's definitely not a direction that I've gone. I've stayed away from it.
You have a great idea, though, when it comes to getting a group together when it comes to this stuff, because I think that would be absolutely great. Mm-hmm. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah, I would. If somebody wants to start a group, let me know. I would join. But I have stayed away from doing this on my own because of the difficulty of doing it alone.
All over my website and such, all over there, I have all the missing person cases. I'm constantly researching missing people that I can put on my site. So maybe if somebody's seen something, or, maybe they've seen them at a gas station or something, and I just encourage people so much, look around you. Keep an eye out for these people because somebody is missing them.
Right. Yep. Sometimes people are right under your nose, like Elizabeth Smart is right under everybody's nose.
As for there was one woman, and she was actually acquitted from it, but the little girl that had been in her trunk and stuff, and she was acquitted for doing it. That bothered me greatly because I believe she did it. And that's what bothers me, is justice sometimes is not done. But, it's I think that using the psychic abilities we have for good is amazing. And like you said, when you can tune into somebody's life and, and help them see things clearly, it's such an amazing feeling.
Yeah. Yep. Well, I think that people who are in this profession want to help others. And that of course, is a real rescue kind of effort, and so we're very drawn to it.
For these psychic fairs, are they something that's authentic for when they set up the psychic fairs and they have a whole bunch of different psychics there? Is that something that's authentic that people should go to?
Well, I myself have never been to a psychic fair, but I've certainly know students of mine who've wanted to do fairs, and as I said, it's not that hard to be psychic if you practice it. If you use cards, you can do a lot with it. And so, and the psychic themselves, they have to pay a lot of money to be in a fair. It isn't cheap, you know. You pay a lot, and then you have to make that back. So, I'm just kind of intuiting that you're probably going to see a lot of psychics who are real, and also psychics who have just learned, you know, and they're practicing. So, and they use it also as a way of getting new clients. So, I mean, I just say two things. One is that I think generally, as long as somebody doesn't start the curse business thing with you, I would avoid those people like the plague and immediately stop the reading as soon as somebody starts to get negative like that. And number two, you know, I'm myself very careful who I would talk to. You know, if you have a problem that's really, really making you feel very vulnerable, you wouldn't just go to anybody for advice, right? There's some people you would definitely not want to talk to.
Right.
I'm talking about if you're just seeking advice. And there are certain psychotherapists you wouldn't want to talk to. There are certain doctors you wouldn't want to see. And there are also, of course, psychics. And psychics are as good. I mean, it isn't just a matter of whether they're being intuitive or psychic. It's the attitude they have. It's their positivity, their approach. It's whether have they worked out a lot of their own problems, or are they going to be biased according to their own issues, you know? You want to be noticing and aware of, is this person making you feel better, or is this person making you feel worse? And that's going to come from their psyche. So being psychic or, you know, accurate is really not enough. To me, it's definitely not enough. So I personally won't go to a stranger. If I'm going to get a reading, and I really don't get readings anymore, but except in my classes, sometimes people read me. But I'm really careful about who I allow to affect me, especially when they're being psychic, because they're going to say things that are true. It's like they can get under your skin. And so I don't want anybody getting under my skin. I'm very sensitive, and so are you. And actually, I think everybody's really sensitive, especially when somebody says something true about them that they hadn't known otherwise. It's like, whoa, oh my God, you got into my unconscious. You got deep in me. And so you want that person to have not only your best interest in mind, but you want them to be a positive person, somebody who really sees the interconnectivity of our whole universe, and that the universe is good and positive, and that ultimately we evolve and grow. And I want that. I want hope. I want to feel like I'm going to get better if I come with a problem. I do not want to feel judged or admonished, or like I made a big mistake in my life, or I screwed up, or that I've got a curse. So really, that's my litmus test: is this person positive? Not just can they be psychic.
For me, I think what I struggle with is I can't read myself. And I don't know
Right.
if that's just me, or is that normal as a psychic to not be able to read yourself?
It's totally normal, because what often happens is, first of all, we're the last ones to be able to see, because we have so much subjective thoughts and feelings and issues in our lives that blind us. That's why we need a reading in the first place. It's like we have clouds around our head. And so a lot of times if you throw cards for yourself, for example, you're going to get what you fear. I can remember, like, I might years ago, I don't like to read for myself unless I'm in a very good mood and with a lot of, you know, like if I have my group or my class around me, I can throw a few cards for myself. But if I'm alone, my cards and my visions are going to reflect my fears. And so that, you know, if you're in a fearful state, which is usually what you're in when you want a reading, you're worried, then the card may just show your worry. It might even show your worst fear. And that's not necessarily what will happen. It's what you fear.
Absolutely. So, yeah.
I think it's good to have somebody else. And it's just like with therapy. Therapists don't give themselves therapy. They go to somebody. Someone who isn't invested and who isn't like smothering from whatever those issues are and can actually help them. And it's the same thing. In fact, psychic reading is a form of therapy. We don't call it that, but it's a kind of, it is a type of therapy. So
now, when we go
don't do it for
online,
yourself.
and when we go online, there are the one sites that you can ask the questions to the cards and then click on the cards and it gives you a yes or no answer. Are those something that we should look at as accurate in any way?
Well, it's a funny thing. I would say yes, and then I would say no, but it works like this. The universe is very magical. It occurs. The universe works according to quantum physics, which kind of means that there's invisible forces at work that we don't understand, but they really are happening, and metaphysical forces. And so, you usually get what you need. Like you can be sitting. I'll just ease into this idea of going online and clicking. Like if I'm sitting in my bed at night and I have a question, I don't have to pull a card. I don't have to call psychic. I can just open a book of poetry at random, and usually good poetry I like, or wisdom. And usually I'm going to see the poem or the words of wisdom. They're absolutely right on for me. And when I first started giving readings, I used to just look everything up in a book. So I'd say to my roommates, I'd say, ask me a question, and they would ask, and then I would pull a card randomly out of the deck and then look it up and read what the book said, and it was always right on, really useful and helpful, and they would go, wow, and I thought, yeah, this is pretty amazing. Now, that's similar to the computer in the sense that there isn't any psychics like a skill involved. There's simply this, what appears to be a random pulling of a card, a random looking up in a book. And yet it has a way of being just right. And I think that's my own guess as to why that works is that there's metaphysical forces at work in our consciousness that lead us to what we need. And so I have this I have this refrigerator magnet. It's like an image of a madam. She's like in a booth, and you press the button, and she'll say, like you ask a question, and you press the button, and she'll say, it's in the cards, or she'll say, it's not in the cards. And so I've used that for years as a yes or no, and that's just like the computer. It's very random. But what I've decided is, and it's so accurate, and I've decided that I already know intuitively what the answer to my question is. And if I think to use the madam on the refrigerator magnet, that when I pose the question, I'm going to get the answer that is the answer I need. I don't know if that helps you to understand what I mean, but I just think there are forces at work that are much greater when I say forces, in our own consciousness.
Absolutely.
That lead us to the answer. So, yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say about a yes/no question in general, they're not great. That's not a great question. It's too simple. We're looking for answers that are subjective reality. These cards and these devices are good for insight, but I'm not sure about yes/no. Yes/no doesn't really provide much insight.
Well, the one I go on is on it's horoscope.com, and they have a yes or no tarot on there. And, 9 out of 10 times when I ask a question and it gives me an answer, it actually gives you it says yes, and then it gives the tarot description of why or,
Cool.
what's going to happen. And 9 out of 10 times that's worked for me. But there are times,
that's great.
well, there are times when it doesn't, and I'll say, is so-and-so going to call? And it'll say, definitely not, and this is why. And the phone will ring a couple minutes later, and I'm like, that thing just said no. So, I mean, it's sometimes that frustration.
And I often look for explanations like, why is that? Why did that happen? And I think the explanation is much more in your own psyche than it is in randomness, But, there are skeptics who would just say, it's just random, it doesn't mean anything. Or, in my view, I think sometimes we get the answer that we're thinking of. We actually project out an answer in our mind. And in that case, I would go with a person. I would ask a person to help me with that rather than pressing a button.
It's absolutely, it's definitely a good thing when you're kind of on the fly and you just got a quick question that you need to know. Should I do this or shouldn't I? And a lot of times it'll say, no, there's danger coming your way, or, hidden agendas of people that are going to stop you from this. And it makes me think sometimes, and even if I go ahead and do what it says not to do, a lot of times there's hidden things in there that I should have listened to when I read that. So sometimes, like I said, 9 out of 10 times it's right. So I just wondered for our audience if that was something that they should actually believe, or, I truly think that you're right when it comes to who you trust as a psychic. I think that, who you trust to confide in that way. I've realized that over the years. I have friends that are psychics as well, and there's some that you just don't want them to open up that part of you, because then it becomes uncomfortable afterwards.
Right. I think it should be a healing experience. And my own, after doing this for many, many years, I think it's helpful if you seek insight more than you seek accurate predictions. For example, if it's 9 out of 10 times correct, there's always that 10% chance that it's wrong. So what are you going to do with information when you just can't be sure?
Right.
And so I find insight works better, because then, like, I ask, what should I know about? So instead of like, will the trip be safe or not? Yes or no. I would rather ask, what should I know about taking this trip?
Right.
And then I'll go with that. And
that's true.
And that's helpful. People do call me when they're about to take a trip. They want to know, is the plane going to be safe? And I look at that. What I look at is how I feel they're feeling at the time of the trip and the days afterwards. So far, nobody's plane has crashed. Of course, its chances of a plane crash are so slim that I'll never really know whether, what it was, how accurate I was. You can see I'm an intuitive, a psychic who, I don't believe everything.
Right.
I don't believe in dogma anyway, period. Any dogma, like New Age dogma or an old religious dogma. So I always keep my mind questioning and wondering. And I find, as I said, insight to be the most valuable aspect of a reading.
For me, I have a 21-year-old daughter. She just turned 21 yesterday. And we've been battling a lot of, I'm not really sure if it's emotional problems or what's really going on, but her biological father has Huntington's disease, and it's been something that I've been trying so hard. She has to give the okay to take the test to see if it's actually positive, or, to be tested to see what's really going on there. She was a normal child from birth, and then when she turned about 16 years old, everything changed. She's not the person she was. She doesn't leave the house. She doesn't have friends. She has just explosive temper, and she's not her anymore. So for me, it's trying to get those answers psychically is rough, because it has to be her decision whether or not she takes this test to see if she has Huntington's and such. So, these are the things that I feel like I need to kind of get better with my psychic abilities. So that's where I kind of struggle a little bit, is how to strengthen the abilities I have.
Yeah. Well, is there anything to be gained by knowing whether you have it or not?
They do have some sort of medication that will give her a longer, more productive life than if she didn't have the medicine. Her biological father is, I don't even know how old he is. He's got to be 46 or 47, and they give him any moment now to pass. He's pretty bad. So, I think that if the diagnosis is early enough, is what I read about, that there is some sort of a medication that will help. Plus, to know how to handle everyday life with her is hard, because, I'm not sure exactly what I'm handling, or, is it maybe schizophrenia, or is it, what is it that I'm dealing with? And that way I know, what kind of a quality of life she's going to have and how to help her have a better quality of life. So that's the hard part. Getting her in there and getting her
Yeah.
tested is hard. It's up to her. She's 21 and I can't tell her what to do. But,
Right.
just in, I don't know, I look for different ways all the time on how to be better in my psychic abilities to be able to help people. And, I
Yeah.
think it's continually, doing more readings and really, the meditation thing, I think, is something I really have to work on. I wasn't kidding. I fall asleep every time, but it's, it's interesting to me to have a psychic on my show because it helps me grow. And having you on
Yes.
here has helped me grow so much today as a psychic
Thank you.
myself. I mean, you are amazing.
Thank you. Well, as far as your daughter, I wouldn't want to read anything about somebody on the air who isn't agreeing to being read,
Right.
very public. And just to say that just a lot of love, a lot of love and positive thinking, positive
is it
positivity. And I'm sure you do all that. And then as far as your own ability or meditation, I really think it's worth finding a meditation teacher who can help you. I actually have I'm not your meditation teacher from a distance, but I do have another audio tape on my website that guides with a mindful meditation. It's really a wonderful meditation. Actually, I have clients who live very, very stressful lives, high-powered, stressful lives who use it. It's called Loving Kindness Meditation, and it's free. It's on my website. It's in the left column of every page, and you click on it, and it tells you to take a deep breath. It's got beautiful music, and then it just helps you to calm down and to feel your body, and then to practice an affirmation, where you think of someone you love and you send them love and you send them well-being, and it's really wonderful to do for your children.
Do you think that if we send,
first,
if
you
we
do it for yourself first, and then you do it for someone you care about?
Do you think that if we,
it has a wonderful effect. It calms you down. And they feel it too, especially a mother-daughter. They feel it. They feel your love. They feel your calm. And then you send it to the whole world, and that really feels good too.
Well, that's what I wondered. Can we send good feelings to other people and have them actually feel them?
I absolutely believe we can, and there's some studies that show that we can definitely do that. There's a wonderful Korean study that was done where they had people pray for people to get women who were infertile and were at a fertility clinic, and the only treatment these people were receiving, and it was all random and double blind. If you know how studies are done to keep the study from being biased, they don't tell the people what the study's about, and they don't tell the researchers either, or the people who were praying for them. And they had people praying that these people, that half of these people who were randomly selected would become fertile. And then they had the other group they were not prayed for. And they discovered that the women who were prayed for statistically significantly were more likely to conceive. And this is a really special, elegant study because it's really hard to prove when you pray for people who have cancer or depression. It's really hard to prove or show evidence that you had an effect. But when it's fertility, it's you either are or you're not, And another study, well, this is a massive study they've done at Princeton University. It's now has a life of its own. And it's a study, meaning that they stopped doing it at Princeton and now they're doing it all on their own. But it's a study where people actually try to tell a computer whether the computer has random number generators. It flips coins. plus or minus 1. And it has people sit next to the computer and say, do more ones, flip more ones, or flip more zeros. And this is the idea here that mind can affect matter, which is what you're describing, in essence. When you say, can we send healing to people? It's mind affecting somebody's body. Can you change through your thoughts? And the evidence is really overwhelmingly true that we can. We absolutely can. We might not be able to bend a spoon. We might not be able to move the Brooklyn Bridge. But when it comes to consciousness and very light electronics, for example, like the computer, we actually can have an effect.
That's amazing.
A lot of good. Yeah, it is amazing, and they've done over 250,000 trials, and they've run the statistics. These are smart people in the School of Engineering at Princeton, and they have found the result. And it's been written about. You can probably find it on YouTube. The Discovery Channel actually did a whole show on on some of these studies that I've described to you, called Through the Wormhole. And they have one episode called The Sixth Sense, and you can get it on demand. It's actually narrated by a very famous actor. Suddenly his name has slipped my mind, but in any case, it's very entertaining, and it looks at really good research, which I've looked at separate from the show, and it's real. It's all real stuff, and highly recommend it. It's an old show. It was done several years ago, but usually you can find it, and you can find these things online too, these studies. So mind over matter is real. We can affect with our mind. Consciousness is energy. And when you think something, like when you send healing or love, you actually are sending energy to people.
Wow.
Because consciousness is energy. Yeah. It's actually studied and studied widely, and it's interesting, the kind of results they're having. So, and of course, subjectively, I can certainly attest to the fact that when we sit around as a group and send healing to each other and to others, that I feel it. I feel it when people send healing to me. Scientists might argue, well, that's because you believe in it. That doesn't mean it's really happening. And that's why, and I do believe in it. I absolutely do.
I do too.
That's why science is useful, though, because scientific studies actually show an effect, whether you believe in it or not. It doesn't matter whether you believe in it. That there is an effect, and it's statistically, it's evaluated statistically, just like pharmaceutical studies or most scientific studies, and they show an effect. So it's real. This is the real deal. It's really happening.
That's great.
It is great. It's a good feeling. There are a bunch of books, and there's some people. Daryl Bim has contributed a lot to this field. Dean Radin is a senior scientist at the Institute for Noetic Science in Petaluma, California. He's written a couple of books on this subject where he conducted many experiments, and he's written some books on it. And Elizabeth Mayer is a psychiatrist from from Berkeley. She wrote a book called Extraordinary Knowing, where she looked at a lot of the science that's been going on, and so yeah, you can, if you're a skeptic, you can go and look at this. Of course, if you're a real skeptic, then your mind is closed, and nothing's going to change your mind. You're basically shut down. But if you're an open-minded skeptic, somebody who just likes to see evidence, and you're open, well, there's a lot out there, and it's good stuff. And I love talking about it. I love teaching it and sharing it, because when people see the evidence that everyone is psychic, they become more psychic because they trust what they're getting. And so it's lovely when people start to see, oh, I have this ability? I didn't know that. Okay. And now all of a sudden I start seeing it. And then the more they realize that they have the ability, the more they start noticing how psychic they really are.
Well, I think for me that would be helpful. I would like to, go in and visit the elderly in the nursing homes and such that don't have anybody, and I would like to be able to sit and, just kind of give that peaceful energy to them, so that the fact that they're alone in what they're going through, they're at more peace.
Yeah. Well, it's true. A lot of people who do hospice work, become very intuitive, and they enter into that world, the world of healing and peace, Reiki, sending energy.
I've
Lovely.
heard a lot about this Reiki stuff lately, a lot about it, and I'd never heard of it before. But I had a lady on my show who does Reiki, and now all of a sudden it seems to be popping up everywhere.
Yeah. Well, it's really, I mean, for me, it's my favorite form of healing. And I actually see somebody who does it. It's just, sending energy to people, and it's very peaceful and quite healing. And it works. Sorry?
So basically, if you have a person that you're sending energy to who has a closed mind, do you still get through?
I don't know. I think that I'm not sure. I think it's funny. Some people, if they have clouds around their head, if they're really closed up and they're miserable, I don't know if you can get through that. I think that's part of what, if there's such a thing as angels, and I think there are, I think that they have a big task because they're trying to get through all the time, trying to reach us, and we are like, we're in the dark, and so to speak, and sometimes they get through and sometimes they don't. But I can't answer that question. I think it depends on the person. I think that it helps, though. You're sending something. You're sending goodwill. You're sending light and care. And I think that it's like water changing, a rock. You keep sending it, and it has an effect. It works.
Well, that's good to know.
Somebody's wide. Yeah. It makes you feel good, too, to send love and compassion.
It sure does for me. I mean, I know a lot of people out there. I have a lot of friends, and a lot of them are going through a lot. So, for me to just be able to sit in my room and just take that time just to send the good feeling and the peace and the love, to know that actually works, that just makes the whole world so much better.
Well, we're happiest. I mean, they've actually done studies of happiness, and we are happiest when we're helping other people.
Absolutely.
Because we feel it ourselves, and we feel what we've done for them. And so that's at the highest happiness levels ever recorded in brain scans have been the Dalai Lama's monks sending compassion and care to other people.
I believe that. I agree. That's my happiest time.
It's kind of a win-win, right?
Yeah, it is. Can you give us your website so we can go on there? I'm definitely interested in reading what you said you had on there about meditation. I'm going to go on there and listen to that thing 1,000 times till I get it right.
Well, my website has two names, JeanneMayell.com, spelled Jeanne. That's the French spelling for Jeanne. Mayell, M as in mother, AYELL.com. And you'll come right to it. And I have those audio tapes, which are really healing, and also lots of blogs. Some of them blogs are on predictions and that have come true, and what I'm predicting, and what my group is. And also I've got some blogs on positive psychology and gratitude. It's a real combination of the tarot, psychic science, and happiness. And the other name is tarotboston.com. I am in Boston, and so I have that domain name. So if you forget how to spell Jeanne Mayell, if you think of Tarot Boston, you'll find it that way too.
That's great, and I encourage these listeners to go on there. You are amazing. And I have learned so much from you in this hour. I mean, I have grown not only as a psychic, but as a person. And that's exactly why I do this. I love meeting people, even if it's just to talk over the phone. But boy, I wish I lived closer to you. I would love to take your class.
Well, Sue, you're a great interviewer, and you're just open, and it's wonderful to be on the show.
Well, thank you
Really
so much, and
appreciate
I
the
would
chance to talk.
I would love to have you back. I would so love to have you back. You
Well,
are
let me know.
amazing.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You have a great day.
All right. You too. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye. Wow, guys, that was an amazing interview. As I told Jeanne, I love my interviews and I love my guests and I absolutely love to learn. And she was, I learned a little bit from all of my guests, and I just today I grew. It feels like I grew 100 feet taller, inside and out. And I just again want to thank Jeanne for taking the time to be on here with us. She is amazing. As are all of my guests, are amazing. But please take the time to go on and check out her website. She's great. Well, that's all we have time for today. And we post all our shows on YouTube. And if you want to know more about our guests and upcoming shows, please visit our info2rail webpage. Just Google info2rail and click on our Google Sites page. As I said at the beginning of the show, right now we're kind of in desperate need for a new board and a new microphone, and we're taking donations. So right now we're viewer supported, and we're asking for just a little bit of help from those who can help us a little bit, just to get boards wear out and microphones wear out, and I want to be able to continue to bring you guys these fascinating, great interviews with these amazing guests. So if you could donate a little bit, we would really appreciate that a lot. I want to thank you for joining us here at info2rail. You guys are all amazing. And as I tell you every week, if it wasn't for the guests and the listeners, this wouldn't be possible. And you guys are amazing. And I want to invite you back here each and every week for new guests and great new topics. We got L.A. Marzulli coming back on with us in August, just to let you guys know. So thank you from the bottom of my heart and from info2rail. I want to thank you guys all for making this possible. You make my dreams come true. May God bless you and keep you, and may his face shine upon you in these uncertain times. We'll see you soon.